I'm with Rudy and Scott. We're going to be talking a little MLB draft and what would you do? So the take that I have is if I was Ben Cherington and the Pittsburgh Pirates, I would take Paul Skenes out of LSU, number 1 overall. I think when you look at the position player depth that they have, I mean, obviously, like it could be better at certain spots, but I mean, they seem to have at least a fairly concrete plan, either short term or long term, at pretty much every spot in the order. And obviously, like Cruz is a fantastic prospect, but I mean, outside of Mitch Keller, I don't know long term what the Pirates are going to do. And ownership is notoriously, I think the Midwest polite word would be frugal when it comes to free agency, despite there being some like pretty lucrative options. So I don't know. I don't know how you guys feel about that. Scott, I know obviously as a Tigers fan, you would love it if Langford and Cruz were one of those two names are available to you at 3, but I don't know. I think if you have Keller and Skenes, then it's a pretty potent one too.
Yeah, it's really it's fascinating because the MLB draft, the thing that makes it so unique is like the slot money, right? Like there's a predetermined amount of money that every team can spend. And so like you see situations like what Baltimore did a few years back where like they go completely off the board and take a prep bat at like in the top 3 so that they can save a ton of money at the top. And then you can pay over slot and get people that the Rangers did something similar last year, right? When they got Rocker, and then they took Brock Porter, who was the number 1 high school arm in the country in the 4th round because they were the only team that was able to give him way over slot, right? So like there's just a lot of like a strategy, a level of strategy in the baseball draft that isn't just like every other sport where it's just like, oh, just take the best player and you're good. So it's fascinating, and the Pirates at 1 are the most fascinating because to your point, like if Skenes is there at 2, the Nationals are taking him. By all accounts, like they absolutely love him. Rightfully so. He's one of the best college pitchers we've ever seen. But at the top, it's really interesting. They can just go Cruz and they can just take the number 1 prospect and they'll spend a lot of their slot money. They have the most slot money in baseball. So like they can just spend their money and do the normal thing and, whatever. Or they can do something like that and take Skenes for slightly under slot, get the best pitcher in the country. They save a little bit of money, not a ton, because he's still, going to be one of the best prospects in the draft, but he's not expecting to go number 1. So you can probably get him on a little bit of a discount. Well, a discount to you, not to him. But
right, yeah.
Also, there's a way, the most fascinating storyline in this entire draft is Max Clark, who is undoubtedly one of the top 2 prep bats in the draft class. And if the Pirates don't take him, he probably goes somewhere between 5 and 10. But there's been this weird push by like his own PR team, like not even like scouts or anything, like himself, his own people are doing this huge push where they're like, he wants to be the number 1 overall pick. And he will take significantly under slot to do so because way under slot at number 1 overall is still over slot at 7 overall. So like, and just like I was the number 1 overall pick. That matters to some people. So like, he has made this huge push, his own agent, his own camp, his own, like himself, whatever, of like, I want to be the number 1 overall pick. I'll take any discount on slot money to make that happen. And the Pirates are like kind of nibbling. Like, who knows if they're going to bite? We won't find out until Sunday, but like, they're kind of like, it wouldn't be the worst idea. We can go over slot the next 8 picks. So it's weird, dude. It's really fascinating.
His situation fascinates me, and I think what makes this draft really, really unique is when you look at last year, I think that there was like this is where I put my bias cap for Tamar Johnson on and say that I do love Tamar Johnson as a prospect. To me, there was like 3 absolute like home run like prospects in that draft in theory, which was Jackson Holliday, Drew Jones, and Tamar Johnson, just in terms of high school prep, where obviously 2 of them have like, I don't want to say nepo babies, but they have dads you may have heard of.
Right.
And Matt Holliday and Andrew Jones.
Weaker draft too, as far as like top end talent.
Yes, and what makes this draft, I think, especially fascinating is a level of college, like polished college talent that is going to be in the top 15 and top 20. I've seen mocks where I think as high as 13 or 14 of the top 20 picks are college bats, or excuse me, or college bats or college pitchers, which is very unique, and I think it's a really smart idea for Max Clark to sort of kind of be like, hey, this class is kind of light on prep. Like, you know, hey, these guys are 22, 23 already. Like, you know.
He's good too.
Yeah, not to say, I think he's getting mocked around like 4th or 5th. It's not like he's, you know, it's not like he's getting mocked around where my Cardinals are picking and he's like, you know, I should go number 1. You know, like, I'm sure anyone would want that to happen. But I don't know. I find it really fascinating. And I don't know. I think you kind of alluded to it earlier when you said there's a very clear, I think the Tigers are in the most enviable position picking 3rd. Because
terrifying too.
Yeah, it's fair. But like because if Skeens and Cruz are both gone, then it's, well, you know, we guess the best. And if one of those two are left, you know, I don't foresee a situation where both of them are available at 3. So I think that the Tigers are in a really nice position, at least from a fan base and like a banking some good faith in the fan base of like, you took no problem. I see the vision.
Right, and that's the thing too to remember is that, like, it's widely considered that Skeens and Langford, if it was any other year, would be the number 1 pick, right?
Correct.
Like they're premier talents. You really, it's a 3. I always hate saying like it's a 3-person draft. Like there's a ton of players that will be really good outside of the top 3, but this is a really deep draft with a lot of top end talent, and so. The Tigers are, I think, in one of the most unique positions out there because they need a bat so badly that they're probably the only team in the league where if on draft, like after the draft is all said and done, if their pick is Paul Skeens at number 3, the fan base is like, sure. Like, you know what I mean? Like, potential like generational talent that's getting infused into your system. He's like the best college prospect maybe since Strasburg. Like he is like the elite of the elite. And he has a much better frame than Strasburg ever had as far as like injury concerns go. And like he's going to be amazing. He's going to be an ace at some point. Like he will. But like the Tigers are just like the only fan base where if he ends up in Detroit, I don't think anyone's going to be like pitchforks, like upset. But they're going to be like, like I kind of wanted a bat because the offense is in such disarray. They're such a shallow system outside of that as well. Like they just need an impact power bat so badly. Torkelson has obviously not been that. Riley Green was it for a month in May, but has been hurt. Like it's one of those things. Like they just need a bat so badly that if it becomes a really, really interesting conversation if Cruz goes 1, Langford goes 2, or some combination of that, and then you're the Tigers. And do you just say, we're not going to pass up on a potential generational arm? We'll fix the offense down the road. We'll fix it next year. Or do you say, we're not going to take the generational arm and we're going to take a swing on either like a Kyle Teal, like the best catcher in the country right now for Virginia, right? Like a really, really solid, not like Henry Davis level of prospect who didn't stick at catcher anyway, but like a solid hitter and a solid defender. Or do you take one of the 2 prep bats that are going to be first round picks, and either Max Clark, like we talked about, or Walker Jenkins, who's also really, really mocked ahead of Clark by a lot of people. Honestly, is a phenomenal hitter that's projects more as like he's a little bigger already at 18 or 17 and projects to be a little bit more of like when he fills out his body, be more of a power hitter type of thing. So do you take preps are risky. Do you take the big swing and, no pun intended, like do you take the big swing and on a prep bat then over one of the best college pitchers we've ever seen? Do you take a high school bat over that?
Yeah, that's the only thing.
You just take what's in front of you.
That's what I was, and when you're when you're a rebuilding team, like you obviously never want to rush it, obviously, but I think there's also that element like you talked about. If you take a prep bet, that
That's a
that's
message.
that's saying we'll see you when you're off your parents' insurance, and we'll
Right.
see you
That's
when
a desperate.
it's
Uh-oh.
what? Oh no, I don't know if it was me or not.
It's just fascinating.
You cut off. That's the desperation, and then
Oh.
you froze on
No,
me. So one more time.
I was just saying, like, that is like the definition of desperation. If they were to take a prep bat over one of the best college pitchers of our lifetimes, like
Well, and I also
that
think
is desperation. But
I
they
mean
kind of are in that position.
is it's Braden Taylor out of TCU is I think interesting as well.
Yeah.
As someone who is a ardent Colt Keith believer, there's a sicko prospect drop for Tigers fans. But as an ardent Colt Keith believer, I know that what they say about his defense is great hitter. So
Right.
I'm not gonna proclaim to be an expert. I did not watch a ton of TCU baseball, but I mean having a guy like Braden Taylor who plays third base at the D1 college level as well, like that's interesting. But that again, I think would also be probably like Logie talked about, like a little bit of an under slot play maybe go get a prep guy in the second round or third round, but.
And that's
at that
the
point,
thing.
You're kind of shuffling deck chairs a little bit when you're doing that.
Yeah, and that's what just makes and I love it, but like that's what adds such a level of strategy to the MLB draft. Like, not to bring up a touchy subject in Detroit. I don't want to just make this like only talking about the Tigers position either. There's a lot of,
Well, they're in picking third. If it was any other team, I think I'd be talking about something else. I think the third pick is
fascinating.
It's always like number one is the most interesting pick. Duh, but like I'm fascinated by the number 3 pick for the exact reason of what could happen. So
yeah, it's to like the Tigers when they had the 3rd pick in the Job draft, right? And everybody freaked out about taking Jackson Job, and it was a huge overdraft, whatever. And in a simple term, I mean it was, and they passed on Marcelo Mayer, and everybody's gonna talk about that for the end of time. Rightfully so. Mayer's going to be a phenomenal shortstop, and the Tigers needed a bat and didn't take it. But when looking at that draft, like they got Job for significantly under slot, and then were able to get all over slot the next like 5 picks. They got dudes that either would have gone back to college or gone, if they're high schoolers, that would have gone to college, all behind them. Because they had fallen in the draft, but were able to convince them to go to the organization because they went over slot on all of them. So like it's all a game. But when you're talking about like talent that's that good, like that 3-headed monster at the top of this draft is so big that it really, I'm not sure I would have the stones to do like an under slot play like that if I had a top 3 pick with those 3 talents on the board. Anything else I'd consider it. If Cruz, Langford, or Skeens are on the board, that's a tough sell.
Scott's saying he can't turn the key. He would not be able to turn that key and push that button.
Right. Yeah, for real, man. They're
tough.
So head and shoulders above everybody else. It's and again, prep bets are hard to project. Like those Clark and Jenkins could be super smart.
And so are prep pitchers. I mean, there are people that ascribe to the theory in fantasy baseball and in real life circles of there's no such thing as pitching prospects. Like you don't know. I think unless like we were talking about with someone like Skeens where it's just like I don't know. Yeah, it happens to work out where the guys that are probably going 1, 2, 3 in the draft happen to be in an electric College World Series final playing with and against each other. Yeah. Like we're not going to see like those kind of sticks. Most of the guys like you're talking about, like a Jackson Job or whatever, it's their footage is, Mrs. Job on the iPhone vertically taking a picture of her taking a video of her son pumping 93 to some dude that's my size. And you're like, all right, well, how's that going to look when, Marcelo Meyer's taking ABs against him in high A ball? Rudy, I do want to ask about you with the Cubs. Side note, my cousin made his first pro start a few days ago for the low A Cubs. 3
Ooh,
innings,
yes, sir.
shutout. 3 innings, a shutout ball, 4 strikeouts.
Let's
For the
go.
Myrtle Beach Pelicans. So you've already got your future ace taken care of in the city
Yeah.
system. But for the Cubs, what are you looking for drafting? Like, is there a blatant need that Scott's kind of hinting at, or is it more just kind of seeing where the cards fall in terms of draft night? Do you have a preference?
Listen, you may have noticed I've been silent this whole time. I don't know what pick the Cubs have, dude. Like, I'm not tuned in.
A lot of people don't. I mean, it's also just like the MLB draft.
The Cubs have the 13th pick, so
I don't believe in drafting for need. As far as like positional need, I don't. I don't think you go, oh, I need a third baseman at the MLB level. Let me take someone that's going to be there in 3 years. Like I think that's a preposterous mindset. That being said, if you want to make it more general to pitching or offense, I think that is like very much more justified if you just need like, hey, we need more bats, whatever. That
I will push back on that take exclusively. I have no problem with the teams drafting a college catcher because they want a major league caliber catcher like sooner rather than later. I don't take issue with like, well, the Pirates just literally didn't do this, but like the Henry Davis pick being like, well, we just want a guy that can be up in 2 years, or like the Adley pick of like, we want a guy that's going to be up in 2 years that can catch for us. That's the only time
I mean, Adley was a 1-1 generational prospect, but like, I get your point though.
That's catcher's the only position where I agree with you 99%. The only justifiable take for that is, well, we need a catcher, and there's this guy, there's a guy at, Virginia that, has like a 70 grade glove. Like, we're taking that.
The Cubs and a lot of mocks that I've seen are leaning bat, which like kind of
they are, yes,
makes sense to me. And this is again just another draft that has so many college bats in it. But I
mean, I do think if you look at what the Cubs have done well, at least as far as who they've drafted and then gotten to the major league level, it's like all bats for the last 10 years. So
that is the Theo Epstein blueprint, is draft, hitting, sign, pitching, which obviously I think the Marcus Stroman is like a perfect example of what you try to do.
Yeah. And the new question is what like is, and I don't think the draft makes the difference, but what, like, how long is Jed actually around? I think that's what people are starting to wonder.
Sure.
I feel like a lot of the time, well, the conversation this season, from what I've seen, has shifted from this is frustrating that David Ross manages this way, and then you come back, like, people are like, no, bring it back. He's managing this roster, and at the end of the day, this is the roster he was given. So, like, why are we starting Trey Mancini at first base in the second game of the London series, for example? What else are you supposed to do if Bellinger can't start? So, like, I think there's questions of, is it just time for something new? I mean, at this point, Jed has been here for almost that whole 10 years too, right?
Wow.
So,
really?
Yeah, he's been.
That.
He was the Joe Biden to the Barack Obama, if that's a
right. And didn't they come in 2013?
I believe they were together at the same time. Yeah, like it was that they were the team together, and then
So the last 10 years of the Cubs have been Jed Hoyer, and then
I also just think by the time that the Cubs are picking as well, like they've drafted college. Correct me if I'm wrong here. I'm pretty sure I'm correct on this. Cubs have been pretty heavy on drafting pitching the last couple of drafts, especially college pitching near the top. And I think from what I've read, they're checking in on a few different like high school like caliber bats, because I think the elite college bats and the elite college arms will probably be gone by the time that they're there. So the question becomes, do you want to go under slot for a pitcher, or do you just kind of want to go, who's the best player available that can hit? And, I feel like I might eat my words on this, but like, dude, it's never a bad idea to just draft like a high school shortstop, because that means that they can play third base, second base, shortstop, center field, right field.
Yeah. Everybody's a high school shortstop.
Exactly. All that really means is you're not drafting a first baseman or a catcher. That's right. All that
everybody's either a high school shortstop or center fielder, literally.
Yeah. I would not have an issue with that at all.
But I do think too that it's like it's starting. Like I think the clock is starting to tick on like the 2018, 2019, 2020 drafts for the Cubs too.
Sure.
Yes,
There's not been a ton of player development there, so I think you might be right that they try to switch it up somehow. But I haven't been tuned in enough to know what they're thinking. But
Well, it's also like there is, so like for instance, like just to, because it's the team I know the best, but like last season, Al Avila's like last attempt to try to save his job was take the best college bat available, because college bats reach the majors quicker than any other profile, right? And we had a pretty high draft pick. I think we drafted like 6 or 7 last year. And so it was just one of those situations where he was like, okay, who's the guy I can bring in that's going to make the impact the quickest potentially? And so that's what he did. And he took the best college bat on the board. That could be like a similar situation here where the Cubs are looking around and they're like, they've spent some money the last couple of off seasons, right? Like they're really trying to like get over the hump and kind of have all this money that's being spent, and like there's a lot of prospects that have been promoted over the last couple of years as well, and like actually see that turn into like an over 500 solidified, like a lot of wins. And so I think that could be, obviously I don't know as much about like your GM situation and how hot his seat really is, but like it could be a similar situation where he just goes, this team needs bats as quickly as possible. Let's just take the college bat that is, we think, the best at 13.
And to play devil's advocate for Jed Hoyer a little bit, I think Brennan Davis is just a guy that just like injuries got in the way. I think a remarkable talent, but just kind of some hurdles that.
What has their first round the last 3 years looked like?
So that's what I was just looking at. 2019, it was Ryan Jensen, who's in AAA because he's 25 years old, but is really not doing well with walks.
Yeah.
2020 was Ed Howard, who's still in single A or still in high A and can't hit. And I mean, Carson, you said high school shortstop. That was high school shortstop. And
2020, I'll give kind of every GM and scouting department a mulligan on 2020. Candidly, I think Asa Lacy's a really good example of like some people just got fooled by states that had senior seasons of high school baseball in the autumn.
How about the number 1 overall pick?
Yeah, well, yeah. I have zero complaints about my team's 2020 draft for obvious reasons, but yeah, I think of the 5 picks that we made, 4 of them are like literally on the major league roster right now, or will be.
Yeah, 2021 was Jordan Wicks. I don't actually know how he's doing.
There's some promise there.
He's also in AAA because was college arm, but right now has a 6.23 ERA. Oh, wait, that's in 4 innings. He just made it to AAA. Never mind. So he was doing pretty well in AA, I guess, this year.
So this is the feel it out year. Got it.
Last year, Cade Horton. That's right.
Yeah, I remember that name.
Who is, let's see, high A, which he was drafted last year. But
I will say though, the name that we're not mentioning here, and I understand it's because the Cubs didn't draft them, but I still want to give like huge prop to, is Pete Crow Armstrong in the Javier Baez trade. Like when we talk about like, I know that obviously that's not like a bat you're looking forward to, but like that dude is going to be a very good major league player.
Yeah.
So I think long term, Rudy, correct me if I'm wrong, but Hap did got an extension, right?
Yeah.
So you had Hap in that outfield in left.
Is Patrick Wisdom a real person?
Yeah,
dude, I still don't know.
It's so funny.
People on Twitter.
I'm not like super intertwined with like Cubs Twitter, obviously, but like the few things I do see, he is like the most controversial player I've seen from an opposing fan base. Like people are either like, this guy strikes out all the time, he sucks, he's awful, and then other people are like, haha, he hit ball far. Suck.
Yeah, literally.
Like I can't, like I don't
Well,
know. Like
Scott, when you
don't
go,
even believe he's real at this
when
point.
you go 1 for 5 with 4 strikeouts on like 4 pitches in the at bat, and then your one hit is a 493-foot
Right.
homer, like
Yeah,
it's
proverbial.
hard to gauge. That's the Paul DeYoung school of playing baseball. I'll put it that way. That's what that is.
It's hobby if he actually could hit a homer. Like
Yeah. So
right.
when I look at the Cubs long term, I mean, Miguel Amaya for catching prospect, like I really like that. I think first base, really anybody can play that. It's just about finding the right guy. I understand Mervis got a lot of hype and like hasn't really gotten that ball rolling like I think Cubs fans wanted it to, but like anybody can do that.
Okay,
you know?
you say that. You're an anti-Mervis guy. I know that.
Well, is he playing every day and hitting well though?
He's in AAA right now.
That's my point, is that there was the expectation that there were fans saying that he should have made opening day, which like.
Yeah, I mean, what I saw people saying about Mervis is his problem right now is that he doesn't recognize major league pitches well enough, and so you're kind of leaving him in AAA to crank AAA pitchers, and
right there's sometimes you got to let a guy.
He's only gonna figure so much out down there. You know?
Right, exactly. So I mean, I think he likes second base. I think Horner's a fantastic pick. Dansby, I think, is Scott and I talked about this ad nauseum for Diamond Digest, and we've talked about it ad nauseum privately. Of that shortstop money class, regardless of what you want to think about the overall value of those contracts, Dansby is ultimately going to be the most value, and you're going to get the most juice out of that squeeze in comparison to all those other deals. So really, I think it comes down to it really comes down to I'm sorry, man, drafting high school shortstops and hoping one of them can figure out how to play third base. That to me feels like the obvious kind of choice for the Cubs to make, is to draft a guy that can do that.
Yeah.
I also think, and not to just like I guess stick with like all of Rudy's fandom here, but I genuinely believe the Royals are in like also one of the most fascinating positions in the draft, because I think a lot of people see somewhat of a cliff right after pick 7, and the Royals have pick 8. So like I think that they're in a really fascinating a team that. I don't know how they got screwed in the lottery. How do they have the 8th?
Yeah.
Yes, they got screwed. They got screwed royally. To no point.
Well, I mean, we probably replaced them because we did not have the 3rd worst record, even close to the 3rd worst record in baseball last year, and did well in the lottery and moved up. So that's probably our fault. But it's shot division rivalries. But it's fascinating because like we talked about the top 3: Skeens, Cruz, Langford. But then after that, you have the next wave. That is the 2 prep bats that we talked about, Jenkins and Clark. Then Kyle Teal, the catcher, right? That gets you at 6. And then Rhett Lauder, the ace for Wake Forest, who is the best team in the country this year. He is the 2nd best pitcher. He's SP2, behind obviously Skeens in this draft. Is probably going to go in that range. And then after that, it very quickly becomes kind of a free-for-all. You talked about like Braden Taylor. I know, Carson, you talked about him earlier. That's obviously, he had a really good season, a very solid College World Series as well. Can play multiple infield positions. Good bat. That could be a guy they go after. And then like the very controversial from Vanderbilt, Enrique Bradfield, right? The fastest player in the country in college, is going to steal a boatload of bases, is going to play presumably elite center field at the major league level. Just a matter of whether he can hit at the major league level. But like definitely at a minimum is going to be like a plus runner, plus defender, like has a pretty high floor. It's just how high is the ceiling. And then you have like the second wave of not as good prep bats behind that, kind of in the mix as well. So I guess my question, more so than like who are they going to take kind of a thing, is more so just like what the hell are the Royals even doing anymore? Like genuinely, like, and I don't mean that in like an insulting way. Like my franchise is in complete disarray as well. But like this was in the same breath as we were. This was supposed to be the pitching wave was going to come up, and it was going to lead them to great heights, and they were going to have just enough like hitting kind of on top of that to help. And instead, all the pitchers have been hurt or bad, and they have 0 hitting. really outside of Bobby Witt, who I don't even really like anyway. That's a different conversation. And so like
and someone who's out
And
for the
Vinny,
season, and
who's
Vinny
out for the year,
Pasquantino.
yeah.
right, and then injury.
I am a
so,
Nick
like,
Prado enjoyer. I will say I do buy my Nick Prado shares.
So my question is just like, what do you, is it? I mean, maybe they just truly just go best player available. We still need everything, but
Yep.
like, if the time, teams that are like, oh, we're still, 3 years away from competing, those teams have more of a propensity to take high school players, right? Because they have a little bit more time on their hands. For the teams that are like, oh, we kind of need to turn a corner here, maybe take college more. So I'm just wondering what the hell is even happening in Kansas City at this point, and what the direction really is.
Yeah, I mean, you missed this earlier, but I was saying I'm like on the verge of like Brian dropping the Rockies.
Love it.
Like I'm like
Love it.
Scott's
I'm
like
like
one less
this
Royals
close.
fan in my life.
I'm like this close to being
anytime
just like
the Royals lose a fan, a flower grows in my yard. Okay, it's a beautiful thing.
Scott's about to DM Cal Eldred, come back to the Royals king. so Rudy, this is the straw that breaks Rudy's
that would
back.
do it. That would do it.
You heard it here first. Scott will be DMing Cal Eldred tonight. As he pulls open his phone. As he pulls open his phone.
And it's funny a little bit because what I've seen coming up with the Royals now too is like in a similar breath to what I was just saying about the Cubs, where people were like, yeah, new GM, new ownership, like this will change some of the bad things about the Royals. And in reality, the new GM was the assistant GM under the old guy, and we're doing pretty much the same thing. And it's becoming so painfully obvious this year that the Royals, I don't know that they've done positive work for a player's development since Bo
Jackson. No.
Right, like Lorenzo Cain. Like it's been
Probably is low.
maybe that long. And
wow. That's
like they've had guys blossom as prospects still, and then they come up and they like get hurt a lot or are not as good. Like aside from maybe Brady Singer having kind of a really good sophomore year, or maybe that wasn't even, maybe it was his third year. But aside from like Singer last year, I don't know that the Royals have had almost any guys that are homegrown get to the majors and improve.
Yeah, I'm with you. And that's something that I talk about with my own team at length because we suck at it too. Like so many prospects crushing it through the minors, whatever, make the majors, and then just flatline and don't get any better. And it's like bashing your head against the wall. And so I'm fascinated with like going forward. Like what can you even do at this point? Like you're not trending really upward. Like you're not. You don't have the reinforcements in the bank to like actually be like this trending upwards organization.
I think their best bet is to pull the but the thing is they're not. Greinke to me wasn't someone they would do this to, but I thought the Royals this year, and honestly even last year, were a prime candidate to give, when James Paxton signed with the Red Sox or whatever. Like that to me was like, that's what the Royals should have done. And let James Paxton give you 8 healthy starts and then trade him somewhere. Like that to me is what the Royals to help. Like if they're struggling so bad with player dev, like let other organizations do it for you. Like, and then you trade the rentals for that. Like if that's how it has to be, that's how it has to be. We can talk about my own team in a couple minutes here. That's going to be the same suggestion.
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of like, okay, if you told me when they signed the Salvador Perez extension a few years ago that come 2023, he's our best trade candidate after we offload Aroldis Chapman.
You'd be like, are you talking about the Cubs? You'd be very confused. You'd be like, is he the DH for the Cubs now?
They literally have nothing, dude. Like I'm not trying to like.
No, there's 3 players in their lineup that I like would want on my team for the next 5 years.
Yeah, but even those 3 players, those are like that's like their like 1, 2, 3 or 2, 3, 4 in their lineup. If they were
Right.
placed on like a good team, all three of those dudes are batting 7 through 9, like on a like respectfully on a good team.
Yeah.
Witt's a 9 hitter this year on a playoff team. I don't even care.
Well, it's because he can't get on base. He'd hit 9 because of the speed. Yeah, he's like the perfect
Correct.
9 hitter
Yeah.
for like the Astros.
And then the other two
Yeah.
probably a little bit closer. Maybe you get up to like 6 or
Yeah, I'd probably
5.
hit Vinny
Maybe.
probably. I could hear an argument for like second because he's a good OBP guy.
Yeah, but I feel like today,
I mean,
like
he's a
if you're on, like,
good
playoff-
he's a good OBP guy who was OBPing 324 this year. You know.
Oh, okay. Well, last year was better.
like
Yeah.
and like I said, like there was a time a few years ago, like I remember having a conversation with Rudy, which this conversation is so ridiculous in hindsight, but I remember like 3 years ago, the two of us having a debate on who had the best double-A rotation in baseball, because that's where all of our prospects were.
Hey, Scott, it still would be the best double-A rotation. in
Right,
baseball.
yeah. So
God, that was right there.
It's
That was
just
right. That was
so
right there.
wild to look at that now, and we were like, "Oh, like this is going to be such a crazy like pitching battle," you know, like in the same division and whatnot. These two are the like two great rotations of the future, are going to go at each other all the time, et cetera, and like for both of them, like it's just for me, it has completely shifted my mentality of like and Carson said something like this earlier. I don't think you can rebuild a franchise around pitching. I just don't believe it anymore. Maybe I'm just like, I'm a sad boy that's been hurt too many times, but like I genuinely, I don't think it's possible. I think in today's day and age of baseball, pitching just gets hurt way too much. And I'm not saying don't draft pitchers in the first round ever or anything, but like all of your good prospects can't be pitchers and you come out of it on the other side. Like if you have 3 or 4 really good hitters that you're excited about, and then you throw in like a Skeens or a Louder, like obviously that's fine. You got a good pitcher coming up. You need to draft pitchers. You need pitchers that are good, and like you want highly regarded ones. But I don't think you can go in your strategy every year for like 5 straight years, be like, we're taking best pitcher available. Like that's going to be what our mantra and our motto is.
Scott, if you want a great way for us to go back to this is in a couple years from now, we can look at that 2022 Angels draft class where they exclusively drafted pitchers.
It was 2. It might have even been last
2021
year.
or 2022, right?
It
One of those
have
two.
Been straight up last year, but yes, in all 20 rounds they took.
I think we will be able to have a good litmus test as that if you can do that. They took, because that is literally what you just described what the Angels did. They said, who's the best BPA college pitcher? Oh, it's 4th round and it's Ben Joyce. And he's going to be our closer in 9 months. Done. Like, we'll see. I ascribe to that theory though. You have to buy it. And speaking of buying it, we can transition to what I want the Cardinals to do. Scott, you mentioned the name already. But you mentioned him a lot higher than you want
Bradfield?
I would like Enrique Bradfield for the Cardinals in the first round. Because I really like Bradfield as I'd like to commit to Jordan Walker in left field. Like he has to learn how to play the position. Like DH is like not. I remember significantly when I pushed back against the argument. The only real like valid and like counter argument I think I had for University DH, people going, "Oh well, it's one extra job for someone," and I was like, "No, it's not. They're just going to have the other 8 guys play 15 games at DH. We're not creating another job. We're just probably extending careers by like." A year, maybe 2.
Sure.
Like, anyway, I want to commit to Jordan Walker in the outfield, but like, I think what the Cardinals doing right now is really smart. Where like the 7th inning will come around, and like, let's say it was like Tommy Edman in center and Lars Nootbaar in right. Well, they'll bring in Dylan Carlson into left field in like the 7th and move Walker to DH and like remove Gorman from the game so they don't bring in a lefty. That can be Jordan Walker's reality for his entire career. If need be, like, or you can rotate him to DH and he only has to play 7 innings, but you keep him in the field, you keep him fresh like that. I would love for the Cardinals to draft a defense and speed threat in the outfield. And I think Bradfield's a really good call for that because I've seen him mocked in the late teens, early 20s, which is around where we pick. And there are other guys that I think would fit. Obviously, like you guys are all talking about, like, oh, my team has drafted very well. If you're a hitter, I'm in zero position to be like, I wish they did more with the draft. But I really would like someone like that. And I know it sounds crazy. Like you say, oh, you should never really draft for need, but I think this is a rare instance in which it's a sort of need, and I think he would also be probably best player available. And I know it sounds weird to be like we're drafting a fourth outfielder, but to me, it's kind of like having two catchers on a roster. I think modern roster construction, you need a fifth infielder or a fourth outfielder, and they're basically a full-time starter because they're either DHing or they're in the field. So I think he could fit that because I think we're going to let Tyler O'Neill walk. And if it was, some combo of that, if it was Carlson, Nootbaar, Walker, and Brad, I wouldn't hate it.
Well, the fascinating thing about Bradfield is that he has such a high floor. Like,
right.
If you want to talk about just like the highest like guarantees to be on a major league roster at some point in this draft, outside of like Skeens, he might be in a bullpen like next year.
If the Pirates have a winning record in September.
Right, you're right. So like he's definitely like at the top there, and then like Cruz and Langford are like almost assuredly going to get a shot at the majors at some point. But like, you want to talk about just highest floor? He's up there because he's like athleticism and speed. Like there is no development for that. That's going to translate everywhere. So like. He's absolutely going to be on a major league roster at some point. If it's just to steal bases and play good defense in center, then so be it. But
you are a Kansas City Royal.
Right. Exactly. He's Gerard Dyson, maybe. But like, you know what I mean? But
Rudy's salivating at the 698 OPS and 48 steals.
All right.
Dude,
but
it'd be a crazy upgrade from anything.
That's so real.
That's Bobby Witt come September 15th per Scott Bentley prediction.
Correct.
Yeah,
not good.
He's not good.
Correct. So and Enrique though, the floor is really high. It's just a matter of the ceiling, and it all comes down to obviously the bat, but even more specifically, it just all comes down to the not like power, because like he's just never going to be a home run hitter, but like. It just comes down to, can he even like consistently get the ball out of the infield at the major league level? Like that's really like the biggest question mark is can he lift the ball? Because he can be a doubles machine. If he can just flop the ball over the second baseman's head for this whole career, he'll have more doubles than God. You know what I mean?
So
he'll be fine.
I'll use a major league example for the Cardinals right now. Obviously, Lars Nootbaar was a 4th round pick out of USC, but very similar in terms of like Lars' issue was like there's good bat to ball. And even at the major league level, like when you watch a Lars Nootbaar at bat, it'll be like just an absolute wheelhouse pitch. And sometimes he'll just hit a really hard one hopper that the second baseman can snag. And you're like, dude, if that had even like a 15-degree launch angle, we're talking about a double. So I don't know. I obviously Lars doesn't have that same caliber of speed, but if you want to talk about someone that's a plus defender in the outfield that like, the Lars Nootbaar, the floor was there of like college outfielder that's well-rounded. The question becomes, can they learn how to consistently hit the ball hard? The biggest development for Lars Nootbaar in the minor leagues was learning how to maximize hitting the ball hard.
If there's any franchise that Bradfield would go to and become like a halfway decent major league hitter, it would 100% be the Cardinals. I don't think anyone would deny that. It's just
it's can he fall to us is the question,
right? And B, it's I mean, if your own team like thinks there's enough there to work, that's like that. He's so fascinating. He could go 8. He could go literally in the comp round, like and it wouldn't surprise me either.
And
you know what I mean?
The other thing with the thing that I look at as well, you look recently, the Cardinals traditionally, and I'm talking traditionally, like 10 years ago, used to draft very high floor only. Like it was a lot of like college pitching. It was a lot of, or like, even if it was like high school guys that you're like, just like Michael Walker is a good example. Like Michael Walker was never going to be a Cy Young, but that dude's been a productive major league pitcher for over 10 years. Like that's the type of guys we targeted a lot. And then recently we've been drafting for ceiling. We've been drafting guys where it's like, we're going to trust our dev, Nolan Gorman, Jordan Walker, and we're going to turn these guys into absolute monsters. And do I think he can become an absolute offensive monster? No, but I would love for us, especially given how this season has gone, to be like, you know what, we're going to take a guy that can be a productive bench piece for us sooner rather than later, where the ceiling's super high for us to unlock. And, you know, we can kind of count on that, you know, rather affordable reinforcement as opposed to, you know, I hope is traded for something at the deadline, Alec Burleson. I have no beef against him. He just can't play defense. He just needs to DH, and, you know, he's not going to in our lineup.
Trade deadline, it's going to be fun.
In the words of Jeff Jones, if Paul Goldschmidt is traded, I will swim naked across the Mississippi River. And that dude is like a top 3 verified source for Cardinals news. So if you want someone with like real clout that knows Cardinals, he's not getting traded. No real player is getting traded. No real player. Will
All
Jack Flaherty get
NPC.
traded? Maybe. But I think Jordan Montgomery, you have to extend. He has like a 2.7 ERA as a Cardinal. We've clearly unlocked something there. I think you just run it back with Michaelis, Montgomery, and then you go sign Aaron Nola and Julio Urias and say, now I can get fired if that fails. But, like, that's it. You have to do that.
Go sign them.
You do. No joke. We have the 15th highest payroll in baseball, dude. Did you know that? It's like 160. We're like 60 mil under the first luxury tax threshold, and we're claiming we're contending for a World Series contender. Yeah, we need 60 mil spent on the rotation. And when I see that, then I will believe the front office. That's the game plan. Is draft college. I want outfielder that can play defense early, and then I want like a Ben Joyce type, you know, some like college closer in like round 2, 3, whatever, that can be in our bullpen in 6 months.
Do you think that this is not a very good free agent class, but do you think that all of the free agents, the top 26 free agents in the league this winter, would win more games than the Kansas City Royals next year?
Yes. Yeah, starting rotation alone, dude. Their starting rotation top 3 would be Ohtani, Aaron Nola, Julio
I forgot
Urias.
about Ohtani.
Yeah, that's a top 3 rotation. That would be already rotation.
So it wouldn't even be close, actually. Now that I'm
forget the other two. If you could build a team that had Ohtani on it and managed to be worse than the Royals are, I would give you a lot of money.
Like if you this free agent, the like all free agent team or whatever would be like what, like Martin Maldonado. Anthony
Chapman would play third. Yeah, this team's way better.
Yeah, it's way better. Yeah, I'm like thinking about this team, and I'm like, this would actually be like a halfway decent like roster. It'd be thin, but like
right.
Okay, so
it would thin up quick.
You did ask about where the Cubs get a third baseman.
Yeah,
Chapman. Maybe.
I don't see a reason why they shouldn't be in on Chapman.
You make a phone call. You absolutely make a phone call for Chapman.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
Same.
Oh yeah. I was just saying. Like, I know someone else was talking to me about Matt Chapman recently.
Yeah. Serious. And like I feel like a lot of teams, honestly, are kind of in that position. Like he's.
There's only 7 third basemen in. Sorry,
I was gonna say how many like
basemen in all of baseball that like you need to have.
Everyone else. Say how many like true third basemen and third base prospects are there even out there? I feel like so many teams are just rolling out of
Chapman, Jose Ramirez, Manny Machado, Austin Riley, Nolan Arenado, Rafael Devers, and I will give a nuclear take, and I will include, because his contract is so nice, Brian Hayes.
That's fine.
Just because he makes like $8 million a year for the next 7 years, and he plays elite defense. If he has a 700 OPS, if he's a league average hitter with that defense, that's a 4-WAR player. Yes,
yeah, that's solid.
I'm paying that. I'm paying that every time.
Well, and that's the thing about Chapman.
Everyone else I'd hear the discussion on.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, it's so fascinating because I think that there's a lot of teams that, like to Rudy's point, could upgrade at third base. And so like Matt Chapman is like in his own, like if you're just looking at the numbers and like in his, and he's having a great year this year.
Oh, he's going to cash in.
But like, right. Like in his own, if you're looking at like his last 3 or 4 years, you're not like, oh, that dude should be like one of the highest paid players in baseball. But this winter, he's going to be, outside of Ohtani, comfortably the best offensive player on the market, I'm pretty sure. And it's
so.
with his career 800 OPS.
Right. And
dude, that's the thing. Hey, Matt
point,
Chapman is a sneaky gonna like you could tell me that he's gonna retire with like 50 career WAR, and I'd believe it.
Yeah, he's obviously an elite defender, but and he's having a career year at the plate. It's one of those things, man. Like it's, you know, when you look at the career, if you're just looking at career offensive numbers, you know, when you see what he's going to end up getting paid, you're going to be like, wow, really? And then you're going to be like, oh, well, and he's an elite defender, and there's a single-digit amount of third baseman that like you need to have on your baseball team in the sport right now.
Yeah,
there's
I think he's going to cash out, man. I think Matt Chapman's going to get paid, and people are going to be really surprised.
I think he's going to get somewhere in the neck of the
market
woods.
Determines value, dude, and like he's going to have a hell of a market.
I think he's going to get somewhere. Let me do quick math to make sure I get this number right. I'll put the number.
Well, the question is, how long are you willing to sign a defense first third baseman for?
I mean, here's the thing: when your defense first in your worst season is like as a hitter is like a 750 OPS, like I'm still taking. I'll pay $20 million a year for that.
Well, yeah,
He's
gonna make way more than 20.
Everyone's gonna pay like $25 million a year. Who's gonna give him the extra year?
I think someone will give him 6 for 150, 6 for 160. I think that's about what I think he's gonna get. That's like 23, 24. I
think he's going to push 30 AAV.
Paul Goldschmidt got 5 for 130, and I could see something like that too, because that's 26 a year.
Right, and that's I think great defensively, no disrespect, but like that's a first baseman. Like
true, but I'm saying in terms of where we thought their careers were ish. I know Goldschmidt's a better hitter. Like, you know what I mean? Like
yeah. I would not be shocked if Matt Chapman walked away with like 28 to legitimately like 30 mil AAV.
Really?
I think he could push
the market.
Like 7 years,
there's no other like hitters that you can really bring in unless you're going to pay 600 mil for Ohtani. Like, there's no other hitters to really bring in. And again, like at worst, you're going to get an elite defender with a 750 OPS. That's your floor. And
I'm trying to think. A lot of the guys.
I think he's going to get paid, dude.
I'm trying to think like hitters that are like free agents. There's like either huge question marks of like what you could get.
I think
they're like veterans.
That's the thing. I think the Cubs would pay that too.
I agree.
Well, yeah.
I mean, people want the Cubs.
Candidly, Rudy, you and I are both teams where like there's no excuse not to for either of our franchises. The Cubs and Cardinals should both be running a top 6 payroll in baseball every single year. Like, it's just how our fan base shows up.
While Grandpa Joe goes and donates $1 million to Ron DeSantis, so his minor leaguers in Florida don't make minimum wage.
Yeah.
Is Stroman getting traded?
No,
dude, I don't know. It's been such a demoralizing like week and a half to go from like we're charging for 500, we can win the second game of the London. I guess 2 weeks. We can win the second game of the London series and we're 500, and then just slide and we're like 7 games under again right now.
Yeah, dude, I get the feeling when you like go on. Yeah.
I mean, the question is like, what are you actually gonna get? Like, I think it's not like he likes it.
Sorry,
he likes it in Chicago, but people think that we could like trade him away and he'll sign back. And like, A, people don't like players don't do that, and B, it's Marcus Stroman of all players.
Yeah.
Dude, that is like the biggest lie fan bases tell themselves every single offseason, every single trade deadline. Like,
has anyone ever done that?
Yes.
Chapman's the only person off the top of my head.
And oh man. Oh, Scott, I have a hockey name, but I don't have a baseball name. Keith Kachuk did that 4 times for the Blues, where he would get traded and then like sign back because he was just like, I get it. And he's like, I wanted to, because we traded him to like instant cup runs. And he was like, I have no issue with this. Like, I just didn't sell my house and I just signed back. Like, thanks for letting me try to get a cup.
Yeah. Right.
He did that.
Like, it never like it doesn't happen.
Common in
And like
hockey, I feel like.
everybody freaks out and like, oh, if he really wants to come back, he will. Like it never happens.
Yeah.
And so like it's just weird. Like the Cubs are in this weird position where, like we talked about it, they're trying to like take steps forward and get over the hump and like do what they have to do and spend whatever money they have to spend to like get over the hump and take the division that's just like wide open for the taking. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I just don't think you can give up on this division.
I agree
That's
with
what I'm
that.
saying.
Even short term, like, or even what am I trying to say? Even if you take short term out of the equation, even if you're like, oh fuck it, like we're not going to win this year, like the division's out of reach, whatever. Which it's not because both of Centrals are a joke. But like, just like pretend, even you're like, oh, we're not going to win the division this year. Long term wise, like you're still like you just said, like the Cubs should go out there and throw a bag at Chapman, right? Like they should go out there and try to bolster it up. They want to long term. The division isn't any like the Brewers are crumbling. The Cardinals, you imagine, bounce back to some extent, but like that's winning isn't guaranteed. We're finally seeing for the first time ever. Like it, you know what I mean? Like it's just like the Pirates are fucking doing the collapse thing that we all knew. I mean, I would assume was like gonna happen. The Reds are weird as fuck. Like it's just like
I do not trust that Reds team as far as
I know you don't.
Them.
You're a hater. So like it's just like
it's not just hating. I can get into it. It is
hating. It's one of those things where like even this year aside, if you're thinking about like, oh, do we trade Stroh or do like we extend him? Like if you're actually serious about like, oh yeah, we really do want to do whatever it takes and spend whatever money to go and be a playoff contender in the future, and we want to like make the last 3 years of spending or 2 years, whatever, of spending in the offseason worth it, then like don't you kind of have to hold on to him and go get a big name free agent?
Yes.
Like, or because if you trade him and then do it, it's almost like, okay, well now we're just right back where we were kind of.
I said this to my friend that's a Cubs fan. Like, I know the one thing that fans like never want to hear is like, oh, we extended this player. Like, that's as good as making a trade. The Cubs extending Stroman at the deadline, like before the trade deadline or whatever, and like not trading him, that is as good as making a trade for them because that's what the Cubs need. You need you need frontline starting pitching. Obviously, like I will take him from you if you don't extend him. Like straight up, if Stroman hits free agency, I want Stroman. I want that's what's gonna happen. Like I think I understand the argument of, oh, he likes it there. I think he also liked living in Toronto. I think he also liked living in New York City. It just Steve
well,
maybe not New York City.
Maybe not New York.
Maybe not. Mets ownership is full of assholes. Shocker. But like, you know what I'm saying? Like, Scott, what you were alluding to of people being like, oh, they'll sign back because they love the city. You don't know that. Like, you can never.
It doesn't happen. Yeah.
It's not that it doesn't happen, but it's just like you can't assume that will happen.
Well, as soon as you let them go, you open the door for other teams to have as much leverage as you and your
and all it says is this. I think if you don't make like they're coming out publicly being like, oh, we're not interested in extending him at this time. Yeah, you are. Yeah, you are. You are. Put a gun to my head and ask me right now, Carson, do you want to keep one of the best players on your team? Oh gosh, man, what do I say to that? Like, come on, like. It's silly to me, and I think the Cubs, if they don't even go after Chapman, it's how much time do I have left here? I got like less than 5 minutes. I'll talk about Ohtani real quick. Saying that, where will Ohtani sign? I think he stays in. Cheap answer. It's not actually LA County, but I think he stays in Anaheim or Los Angeles. I don't think that he goes anywhere else.
I think he's still an Angel.
I agree, because here's the thing. They've proven that they can put together a team that's like competent enough. And
I don't know about that, but yeah.
This year, I think it's a good example. They're competent enough.
They've been skidding the last 2 weeks. They're like right back to the 500 ball club.
They have, but my point being is like this is not a 70-win team is what I'm looking at. Like I look at that Angels team and I'm like they can. Yeah, they're clearly taking the right steps, and the next steps to that are extending Ohtani, and then, figuring it out from there, whether it's signing Stroman, like bringing in a guy like that, like to go along with Patrick Sandoval and Reed Detmers and Ohtani in that rotation. Lord, that would actually be nice.
I think it would be
Sandoval
hilarious if they literally started pairing top prospects with Rendon just to get him off the fucking team.
Yeah.
Do you realize how much he's getting paid to
35 a year
on the bench and do nothing, and when he does play, be bad? Like,
this is like when people floated the Cardinals should trade Nolan Arenado. I'm like, do you realize after this season he makes $26 million a year for the next 4 years for what he's doing? He's not going anywhere. Like there is.
It's
look at how much Rendon makes for how little he provides.
Well, those deals also don't happen though. Like people said people said the Cubs should do that with Jason Hayward for the last 4 years. It didn't happen. Like
because it's not worth it for either. It's not worth it really for either party. It's not worth it for the party that's taking them on. Like most cases, like it's not a salary cap sport. You're not like the Arizona Coyotes where you need to, be paying a certain amount or whatever. Like, it's not really worth it in that regard. And on the flip side, I mean, I don't know, like
Angels also aren't playing their home games at UC Santa Barbara Stadium.
Correct. It's just like it's at the end of the day, it's really not worth it for either side. And people love to mock that stuff all the time, but that just never ends up actually being worth it for any party involved. So I think he just stays with the Angels. I think it's super anticlimactic. I think they give him a bag. Like he's gonna make $500 million. Like he's gonna make a shit ton of money. But I don't think that he's leaving LA. He chose the Angels for a reason.
I think that's why Moreno tried to sell the team, so he wouldn't have to give that huge contract.
Well, that's the other thing, though. It is Artie, though. Like, if I can trust anyone to start a contract that starts with a number 5 or a number 6, that's the guy I'd bet on to write that check more than any other owner in all of baseball. Maybe any owner in all of professional sports other than, like, Jerry Jones. Like, that dude will sell out.
That's what people have been talking about around it too. Is it's like there's so much value in an Ohtani contract that's not associated at all with.
Dude, did you see the advertisement thing the other day? The Padres.
Yeah,
you see that video? The Padres. So like the Padres, the day before the Angels came into town, it was just like their normal ads on their backdrop and on the mound and whatever. And then the Angels came into town, and for the entire Angels series, they had Japanese ads all over the park. Like. You know how valuable that is?
That's insane.
Like, if you're the and like if you watch an Angels game, I know like for
it's
me, they're a West Coast team, so I have to stay up.
It's a little tough sometimes,
They like when especially when Ohtani pitches, all the ads on the backstop and whatever are literally like Japanese,
full Japanese,
like Japanese
no translation either. It's just straight up Japanese.
Yeah, it's just straight up like in Japanese. So like the amount of money and additional revenue that he gets and that's only the tip of the iceberg. Like if you've ever been to Comerica Park, Detroit, Michigan, other side of the country from LA, pretty much as polar opposite as a city gets, LA and Detroit. And when I went to go watch Ohtani, I've seen him twice at Comerica Park, pitch once, hit once. Both times I've been there, there has been a sea of Angels fans. Like they travel so well now. Like there's so many people from Japan that go to these games and want to watch him. It cannot be understated how much money he makes, not only in the game of baseball, but whatever franchise he's going to be on.
If you want like the 1% version of that, like Lars Nootbaar after the WBC, like as someone that watches, the Cardinals games and I get Bally Sports Midwest commercials, you see like Lars Nootbaar, it's commercials for it's like 2 companies he has ads for. But like you said, there's ads behind the backstop where when Lars Nootbaar is up to bat, suddenly it's no longer Shane & Co. Diamonds. It's, suddenly maybe it's an Air Tokyo ad just when Lars Nootbaar is batting. And that's a dude that I'm like, he could be like a 3-WAR year player. Yay. Like he could maybe I could see him maybe sneaking in an all-star in like 2-3 seasons if he keeps developing well. That's that level of talent. We're not even talking about a guy that has, I think I'm not exaggerating when I say this, somewhere around an 1100 OPS and a sub-3 ERA.
He's on pace for like around 60 homers. He's on pace for 60 homers and over 200 strikeouts on the
I forget, somebody I follow on Twitter, she said it was the tweet saying he's on pace to like pass Judge's record. And someone quotes you like, Shohei Ohtani has the opportunity to do the funniest thing imaginable. And I would absolutely love it to watch Yankees fans shove it.
If
Ohtani breaks Judge's record, it would be.
It's not a record, by the way. But if he hit,
no, it's not. It'd be cinema.
If he hit 6, I know I don't have to convince either of you that it's not a record. Right, Cubs and Cardinals fans.
Take some steroids like an adult. All right, dude?
Right, yeah. But yeah, it would be hilarious if he went out and hit 63, 64 homers.
Yep.
And had 200 strikeouts. Like,
yeah.
He'd have the most WAR of any season outside of like
this is the MVP speech. He just gets up there
right.
and he goes, I'm never signing for the Yankees. He just walks off.
He would like break WAR. Like that would be the highest WAR season outside of like maybe a Bonds or a Ruth year. Like that would be
that's what frustrated me last year was to like, well, Aaron Judge has more WAR. And I'm like, that's because that formula, like it just straight up cannot calculate what he does. It can't accurately
it calculates it as two separate people, and then we just manually add the pitching WAR and the hitting.
Yeah, you can't. It's
there's no number for the value he provides that it's both the same person.
He needs the Ryan Howard at shortstop positional value adjustment.
All right.
That's what he needs. He needs the free.
Howard was a shortstop. He's in Cooperstown right now, right?
Exactly. All right, and on that hilarious bit, I got to get out of here. I'm meeting some former roommates for dinner. So good talk, good draft talk. I'm sure